When you hear the name Tashkent, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture a Central Asian bazaar full of spices and chatter, or maybe you think of wide boulevards, marble buildings, and metro stations that look like underground palaces. The truth is, Tashkent is both. It's a city of layers. On one side, you have the old Silk Road town with mud brick houses, mosques, and lively markets. On the other, you have a Soviet built capital full of straight roads, fountains, and modernist architecture. This mix didn't just happen, it was carefully planned. For most of the 20th century, the Soviet Union tried to turn Tashkent into a showcase city, a model of what socialism could do in Central Asia. But behind the shining buildings and leafy parks, there's another story. One of earthquakes, propaganda, cotton fields, and even the death of a sea. So let's take a walk through the story of Tashkent. Long before the Soviets arrived, Tashkent was important. It sat on the Silk Road, linking China, Persia, and Russia. Caravans stopped here to trade silk, spices, and horses. The city was rich in gardens, canals, and craft markets. When the Russian Empire conquered Central Asia in the 19th century, Tashkent became their base. They built new roads, military posts, and European-style houses. But to Moscow, it was still a colonial town. That changed after the Bolshevik Revolution. In the year 1930, the Soviet government made Tashkent the capital of the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic, replacing Samarkand. This was a big deal. It meant money, buildings, and political attention would flow here. Moscow wanted Tashkent to be the modern face of socialism in Central Asia, a city that showed how the USSR could bring progress to what they called the backward East. From the 1930s onwards, the Soviets started reshaping Tashkent. They built universities, theaters, government ministries, and wide roads. Housing blocks for workers popped up. The style was classic Soviet, sometimes heavy and monumental, sometimes clean and modernist. But architects also tried to add a local touch. Patterns from Uzbek textiles, domes inspired by traditional architecture, and decorative tiles. The goal wasn't just comfort, it was messaging. These buildings whispered, see, socialism respects your culture, but it also makes you modern. Still, most of the city kept its older neighborhoods, with winding alleys and mud brick houses. But that balance would not survive the 1960s. On April 26, 1966 at 5:22 am, the ground under Tashkent shook violently. The earthquake was not huge in magnitude, about 5.2 on the Richter scale, but it was shallow. Adobe houses and old buildings crumbled. In minutes, much of the old city was destroyed. Around 300,000 people lost their homes. Entire neighborhoods vanished. It was a disaster. But for Moscow, it was an opportunity. The Soviet leadership promised not only to rebuild Tashkent, but to make it a model city, bigger, better, and more modern than ever before. Within days, help poured in. Engineers, architects, and construction brigades came from across the USSR, Russia, Ukraine, the Baltics, and the Caucasus. By the end of the 1960s, whole new districts were rising from the rubble. This was the moment when Tashkent truly became the Soviet showcase city. Walk through the central Tashkent today, and you can see the results of the massive rebuilding campaign. Wide boulevards lined with trees, apartment blocks built with prefabricated concrete panels, public squares designed for parades and celebrations, new cultural buildings like the State Circus, theaters, and museums. But one of the biggest symbols of how Tashkent was turned into a Soviet showcase is its metro system. The Tashkent Metro system is a work of art. It opened in 1977, making it the first metro system in Central Asia and only the seventh in the entire Soviet Union. But it wasn't just about transport. Moscow didn't build a subway in Tashkent because traffic was terrible. It built it because Tashkent was meant to be a model city of the East. And in the Soviet worldview, a modern socialist capital had to have a metro. The stations were designed like underground palaces. The stations were rich in marble, granite, ceramics, carved alabaster, and glass, often featuring mukarnas, domes, arches, and decorative lighting that evoke both Islamic Uzbek designs and modernist influences. The Cosmo Naftalar station, which translates to cosmonauts, is a space-themed station. It is decked out with Milky Way ceilings, blue ceramic portraits of space heroes like Yuri Gagarin and Tereshkova, and luminous medallions. The Pakhtakor station pays homage to cotton farming, with mosaics of blooming cotton plants and symbolic decor. Alisher Navoy evokes a palace with turquoise bas-reliefs and domed ceilings inspired by Islamic architecture. It is one of the most famous stations in Tashkent and is named after the renowned 15th century poet and statesman from the Timurid Empire. The station's grand domes and traditional ceramic motifs celebrate Navoy's literary and cultural contributions. Mustaqilik Medoni station, which is named after the central square right above it, features marble halls, chandeliers, star pattern floors celebrating Soviet space achievements, and a grand stately feel. Both the station and the square used to carry the name Lenin and were called Lenin Medoni. But after the fall of the USSR and the proclamation of Uzbekistan's independence in September 1991, both were renamed Mustaqilik Medoni, which translates to Independence Square. The metro system spans 70.4 kilometers, includes 50 stations across 4 lines, and handled 270.3 million trips in 2024, averaging around 741,000 daily ridership. It is also earthquake resistant by design. Built in a seismic region, the system incorporates reinforced concrete structures designed to withstand even magnitude 9 earthquakes. For decades, the metro also doubled as a nuclear shelter because it was built during the Cold War years when a US-USSR confrontation seemed possible. For that reason, photography was prohibited in the metro till 2018, when the ban was finally lifted. The 1966 earthquake gave Soviet planners a blank canvas. They wanted to build a city that would impress not only visitors from Moscow, but also from the developing world. In the 1960s, the USSR was competing with the USA for influence in Asia and Africa. So Tashkent was designed to say, look, socialism brings modernity to the East. The architecture reflected the balance between the old and the new. It was modern and functional, but sprinkled with Uzbek flavor, tile patterns, arches, and domes. This hybrid style became known as Tashkent Modernism. But here's the part most visitors to Tashkent never see. All of this modern beauty was financed by something very simple: cotton. Cotton was Soviet Union's white gold. Starting from the 1920s, Moscow pushed Uzbekistan to grow more and more cotton. By the 1970s, Uzbekistan was producing over 65% of all Soviet cotton. Fields stretched endlessly across the Fergana Valley and the deserts of western Uzbekistan. Every autumn, schools and factories would close, and people, including children, were sent out to pick cotton by hand. It was a massive operation, and it made Uzbekistan vital to the Soviet economy. But there was a hidden cost. Cotton needs huge amounts of water. To grow it in a dry region, the Soviets diverted the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya rivers into canals. But these rivers used to feed the Aral Sea. By the 1960s, the Aral Sea began shrinking. Fishing towns lost their water. By the 1980s, ships were stranded in the desert. Dust storms full of salt and pesticides made people sick. What was once the fourth largest inland sea in the world turned into one of the planet's worst environmental disasters. By the 2000s, the Aral Sea had shrunk to roughly 10% of its original size. So while Tashkent showed off new fountains, parks and boulevards, the countryside was paying the price. The showcase city sparkled, but it was built on the drying bed of the Aral Sea. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Uzbekistan became independent. Suddenly, all of those Soviet buildings, monuments and boulevards became awkward reminders of another era. Some were torn down, others were repurposed. Many fell into disrepair. Some Soviet symbols were removed or renamed. New monuments were built, like the statue of Amir Timur, a national hero. The metro stations were renamed to reflect Uzbek history rather than Soviet ideology. Yet over time, people began to see the value of Soviet legacy. Tashkent's Soviet modernist buildings are now considered unique heritage, a rare blend of Soviet planning and Uzbek design. Group of architects and preservationists are now fighting to save these buildings. Some even argue that Tashkent's modernist landmarks deserve UNESCO protection. At the same time, new construction projects sometimes threaten this heritage. The city is still negotiating its identity between the past and the future. One of the most fascinating things about Tashkent is how it wears two very different faces. On one hand, it is a city of the Silk Road, full of mosques, madrasahs and bazaars that remind you of centuries of trade and culture. On the other hand, it is a Soviet showcase. If you wander into the Khas Imam complex, you step back in time. This is the spiritual heart of old Tashkent, home to the Mui Mubarak Library, which holds one of the world's oldest Qurans. Just nearby stands the Kokaldash Madrasa, a huge 16th century Islamic school that once towered over the marketplace, reminding travelers that Tashkent was a city of faith and learning. And then there's the Chorsu Bazaar, still buzzing with life today, which has been a trading spot for centuries. The domed market hall you see now is Soviet built, but the site itself has always been where Silk Road merchants gathered. Now walk a few blocks in another direction and you will find yourself in a completely different city. Here stands Hotel Uzbekistan, a giant concrete block built in the 1970s to host visiting delegations and foreign guests. Just across the way is Amir Timur Square, surrounded by wide avenues and monumental Soviet architecture. The People's Friendship Palace was built to hold official ceremonies and to show off Soviet ideals of unity. Rising far above everything is the Tashkent TV Tower. Completed in 1985, it is a futuristic symbol of Soviet engineering that could be seen for miles. Put together, these two sides of the city tell a bigger story. Tashkent was never just an old Silk Road outpost, and it was never just a Soviet invention. It is both, a place where caravans once traded silk and spices, and a place Moscow rebuilt as a modern socialist showcase. And that is what makes Tashkent so unique. You can stand in a centuries-old bazaar in the morning and ride a Soviet-built metro in the afternoon. And in both moments, you're standing in the middle of history. If you visit Tashkent now, you'll notice layers of history. The old city with its mosques and the Chorsu Bazaar buzzing with life, the Soviet heart with its modernist buildings, leafy boulevards, and metro stations decorated like museums, and the new Uzbekistan with shiny malls, glass towers, and ambitious redevelopment projects. The Soviet showcase city is still there, but it's now just one chapter in Tashkent's long story. That brings us to the end of the video. My name is Ajay and this is Alive and Curious. And if you like the video and for more such stories from around the world, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. You may also consider becoming a member of the Alive and Curious community, which will give you access to the exclusive perks. Thank you. See you in the next one.